MultiGreen, building attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily real estate through impact investing.
Welcome to the MultiGreen podcast. I'm your host, Randy Norton, and today we'll be speaking with Steve Oyer, the CEO at IX Investments and a true expert on real estate, renewables, and impact investing. In addition to over 35 years of business and investment experience, he was a founding member of the non-commercial family office councils at NYU, Princeton University, Johns Hopkins University, and where Steve and I initially met, Stanford University. It was Steve Oyer who took lead at IX to structure and finance the MultiGreen transaction. Some don't know this, but I give Steve the credit for coming up with the name MultiGreen. Enjoy our conversation. Steve, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Randy, I'm glad to be part of the podcast and part of MultiGreen.
Steve, for the benefit of the listeners, I just want to chronicle some of the things that we did together this year. On January 20th, you were at the Prince Charles Estate at Dumfries. We later met in Zurich after we launched from the World Economic Forum. And of course, we presented together at the New York Stock Exchange for the IX annual shareholder meeting. Steve, one of the things you told me when we started working together was to have a current passport. And you were right. From Stanford to Davos, from Humphreys to Zurich, and presenting together at the New York Stock Exchange earlier this year, we had a heck of a 2020, so thank you. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about your background and experience in real estate and the investment business overall?
Sure, Randy. I grew up in a family business that was 3 generations involved in the real estate, construction, concrete business. We owned a lumber yard, and we owned commercial, industrial, and multifamily housing. My first really exposure to multifamily housing was I was 8 years old, and I was at a zoning meeting trying to get something approved. My father was trying to get something approved to build apartments. And this was in a working class community. And what was really brought home to me in the midst of all the contention of a zoning meeting was that people needed a place to live. They couldn't afford single family homes in this neighborhood. They had jobs and they needed a place to live. And that really was something that I was attuned to even at that age. My first real institutional real estate experience was when I was at Paine Webber. This was prior to the UBS days. And I was working on projects that were pre-TEFRA. This was the Tax Equity Fiscal Responsibility Act, was subsidized housing in the multifamily market. It was really at the beginning stages when institutional capital was coming into real estate and partnerships were being sold and formed. It really was the beginning of the ability for capital from both family offices and institutions to come into large-scale real estate projects.
That's a great experience. Why is IX Investments involved in MultiGreen?
Maybe, Randy, I could give you an overview of IX first, because that'll frame how we got involved.
Great.
We're not a fund. We're a permanently capitalized holding company. We have shareholders. We have relationships with those shareholders. They're primarily single-family offices from around the globe, really, about 12 or 13 plus countries. Those shareholders have interests that are aligned with ours. IX is committed to focusing on areas where capital can be deployed intentionally and have impact, where we can achieve top-tier returns, but scalable impact for the long-term nature of our investments. Relationships are key here. One of the things that drew us to MultiGreen was the expertise in the operating business that your single-family office built their wealth in. And the idea that we could together deploy that intentional capital and draw private wealth into real estate and create this naturally occurring workforce housing that you and I kind of dreamed about when we first started talking.
I remember those conversations, those very early conversations. It's been really fun to watch this unfold exactly, in many ways, how we thought it would. Let's talk about how the MultiGreen governance and impact measurement models align with IX Investments.
It is a different model than most. I serve on investment committees for foundations and endowments. I've been involved with RIAs and others with larger asset managers. We have a two-tier structure that I think serves our mission very well. One, first, is the investment committee function. That's where the underwriting is done and people look at the deals and make sure that they are sound financially and have the long-term returns both on the IRR and the multiple on capital we're looking for. Then there's an impact committee, and that impact committee is focused on making sure that the intentional capital we're deploying can have the change in the communities and in the environment that we want. There is a measurement that we're bringing to the table there, and that is the impact rate of return that we've licensed at MultiGreen from the social value investing convention that one of the founders of IX created, Howard W. Buffett. We feel like the impact committee gives us the ability to continue our fiduciary responsibility that we have to investors to preserve and grow their capital and be transparent and report the impact that we're creating with that capital through the multifamily projects we're developing. And then there's the other side of it. We've got a great board. We've got people that are aligned from IX, from independent third parties, and all of us together are focused on a mission that we've defined, we know the path, and we're executing on.
Well, thanks for that insight. What is your view on disruption and new technology in this built environment?
I think we're really in a transition period. Just contrast where we are with energy production. Every home, every multifamily apartment, we need energy in electricity, natural gas, other things. If you think back to this whole big change, I think if you look at what we're trying to accomplish, there's one area where you can truly think globally and act locally, and that's in the built environment. There's exciting new materials that are being developed, even at the nano level. The techniques that have been used to construct multifamily housing and every other type of housing are being disrupted. We're disrupting the time, the cost, the waste, and the safety. There's a spectrum of possibilities that are incremental, from panelization to modular to modalities, using steel versus wood versus recycled plastics and other carbon-based materials, both on the structural side, the internal finishes, the external finishes, and even new cohesive laminate technologies that combine all the things we're talking about. Then even on the way that we're looking at long-term energy and sustainability, it's solar, it's wind, it's batteries, all of it leading to that attainable and sustainable housing we're looking to build.
That's great. Why do you think MultiGreen projects resonate with investors?
I think it's the underwriting process first, and that's something that your team has brought to the table. It's this patient capital and a value bias. Then it's the structure. It's a co-invest approach and not a fund. There are appropriate times when funds at scale can really deliver to investors, but in this particular case, working on project by project and not a blind pool serves the investors very well, and that helps to resonate. Then it's our sector focus. We're non-generalist. We don't look at the whole world. We look at a single focus on demand and supply in this workforce housing, in this ability where nurses, firefighters, teachers can't seem to be able to live in the communities they work. Then it's the classic part of real estate, which is location, location, and location. The pipeline we have and the projects we're working on are in the right locations at the right price and the right time. And then it's the alignment of mission. It's the profit with purpose. That's what helps resonate with investors.
I want to remind everybody that's listening how this MultiGreen venture came about before I ask these last two questions. People often ask, hey, tell me about the logo or tell me about the name. And I often say it was Steve Oyer. Talk to him. Steve, when we were in Las Vegas, do you remember that day, how we came up with the MultiGreen name?
I think we were all struggling, sitting around a table trying to figure out what we wanted to be as we launched this company. And the two things that were obvious that were before us were that we're involved in multifamily housing and we wanted to be green. And so it kind of came together in the most simplistic way. And I think that's the way things that are lasting and have the right naming and brand come together. It's simply stated.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. And that was a fun day here in Las Vegas. So here's my last two questions for you. The first question is going to be about green. I want you to locate and define your green. In the spirit of MultiGreen, what are some of your favorite green things? And that can be anything.
I think it's the pristine smell from a forest and the different shades of green that's around you. I think it's the green tones of the water as the sun hits it. And I think also it's the ability to look at the fields in the Midwest where I grew up and see corn and see beans and see all the things where it's shuffling in the wind and you get that tone when the sunlight hits it. That's green to me. The other thing, Randy, is that I grew up in a very industrial area. When you talk about shapes, forms, and smells, I remember offloading rail cars of lumber that had come in from the Northwest. And you'd open it after it being weeks at a time coming across the country. And the smell of that lumber just was amazing. And then having the chance to visit the Northwest and really see those forests and the beauty, kind of the holiness and the stewardship of what sustains and shelters us. That to me is kind of the object and the memory that connects me with MultiGreen.
So Steve, here's my last question. It is the end of 2020. We've just completed 4 transactions. And on the global stage, we committed to improving the state of the world by constructing 40,000 new attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily homes by 2030. If you had one wish for MultiGreen, what would it be?
So Randy, my wish is that the progress we've been able to achieve in this challenging moment for everyone multiplies when the pandemic subsides and the economic landscape turns in our favor, hoping that it will enable us to achieve our goals for all MultiGreen stakeholders, our investors, our employees, the tenants, and the communities that we serve. My father's sage advice to me in business and life was, nothing is too wonderful to be true. And that I really believe that.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, Steve, and I look forward to doing this again with you soon.
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for listening. Join us as we build 40,000 attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily homes by 2030. And if you like the content you're hearing, hit the subscribe button. Follow us at Think MultiGreen and sign up to learn more at www.multi.green.